I am protected. The Almighty is with me. What is written for me will reach me. What is not written for me will pass me. I am stronger than what I'm facing. I will come out of this. I am surrounded by mercy, guided by wisdom, and supported by the Almighty in ways I can't even see. Say it until your heart believes it. Say it until your mind accepts it. Say it until the fear begins to shake. Say it until your faith becomes louder than your worries. Because sometimes the barrier between you and your breakthrough is not your dua, it's your doubt. And the way you defeat doubt is by speaking truth, speaking light, speaking faith, speaking what the Almighty has already promised. You don't fight darkness by discussing the darkness. You fight it by turning on the light. So tonight, speak these words with confidence. Everything working against me will fall away. Everything meant for me will find me. My life is shifting. My path is clearing. My heart is healing. My blessings are coming. My sustenance is written and it is secure. I am not alone. I am not abandoned. I am not forgotten. My brothers and sisters, when you speak like this, you are not commanding the Almighty. You are commanding your soul to trust Him. You are commanding your heart to calm down. You are commanding your mind to surrender. You are commanding your fears to lower their voice. The Almighty loves a believer who speaks with hope, a believer who speaks with trust, a believer who speaks knowing that the one who wrote their story can rewrite any chapter at any time. When we talk about shifting from fearful praying to confident, faith-filled speaking, we are talking about transforming the entire posture of the heart. Many people pray with anxiety buried deep within their words. They raise their hands, but their hearts shake. They ask, but they fear the answer. They call out. But inside they are wondering whether the Almighty has truly heard them, whether their situation is too heavy, whether their past disqualifies them, whether their weakness makes them unworthy. This kind of praying drains the soul because it becomes a cycle of worry disguised as worship. It becomes a repetition of fears instead of a declaration of trust. That is why learning to speak with faith is such a powerful shift. It is not about abandoning dua. It is about elevating it. It is about moving from begging to believing. It is about turning your words from mere requests into instruments of conviction. When a person speaks with faith, their entire being begins to align with hope. The tongue starts commanding the heart. The heart starts calming the mind. The mind stops replaying fear and begins rehearsing certainty. And suddenly the believer is not just praying for relief, they are speaking like someone who knows relief is already written. The believer is not just asking for healing, they are speaking like someone who knows healing belongs to them. The believer is not just requesting ease, they are speaking like someone who knows ease has already been sent from above, even if the eyes haven't seen it yet. This shift is not arrogance. It is not entitlement. It is obedience to the call of trust. The Almighty has already promised goodness. He has already promised mercy. He has already promised provision. He has already promised that He is near. So when you begin to speak with confidence, you are simply aligning your words with His promises rather than your fears. Fearful praying often sounds like a cry coming from a wounded place. The person keeps repeating their problem, describing it, replaying it, expanding it, almost magnifying it unintentionally. They pray, "O Almighty, everything is going wrong. Nothing is working. I am overwhelmed. I am stuck. I am lost." And while it is absolutely allowed to express pain, sometimes the pain overtakes the prayer. The fear becomes louder than the faith. And the believer walks away from their prayer feeling drained instead of revived. Confident speaking, however, changes the energy completely. When you speak with faith, you begin to say things like, "The Almighty is with me. I will come out of this. Something better is on the way. I am held, I am guided, I am protected." Your situation may not change instantly, but your heart does. The heaviness inside you begins to melt. The darkness inside you begins to shift. The worry inside you begins to loosen its grip. The clarity you needed begins to appear. And this transformation does not require your circumstances to improve. It requires your words to improve. Think of your tongue as a key. Every fearful word locks doors. Every faith-filled word unlocks them. When you speak fear, you feed fear. When you speak doubt, you strengthen doubt. When you speak negativity, you give negativity permission to grow roots. But when you speak faith, you cut the roots of fear. When you speak trust, you silence doubt. When you speak hope, you breathe life into your spirit. And this kind of speaking teaches the soul to rise above hardship. It teaches the heart to lean into the unseen. It teaches the mind to surrender without collapsing. This is why the shift is so powerful. It's not merely psychological, it's spiritual. Words carry weight. Words shape reality. Words condition the soul for victory or defeat. Too many people pray with the belief that everything around them is stronger than them. They speak as though the problem is towering over them. They approach prayer from a place of weakness rather than worship. But when you shift your words, your posture changes. You begin to approach your situation with a spiritual spine. You begin to recognize that weakness is not your identity. It is simply a temporary state that the Almighty can transform at any moment. You begin to understand that speaking with confidence is not denying your struggles. It is declaring that your struggles do not control your destiny. You begin to see your obstacles not as walls, but as temporary pauses before the next chapter opens. This shift in speaking changes how you breathe, how you think, how you walk, how you face the world. And the beauty of speaking with faith is that it does not require perfection. You do not need to have everything figured out. You do not need to be fearless. You simply need to choose a different tone. You need to choose words that lift instead of words that sink. You need to choose words that reflect trust instead of words that echo panic. You need to choose words that remind you of who is in control, not words that repeat what is out of control. When you speak in this way, even the challenges that once intimidated you begin to lose their power. Your heart starts learning discipline. Your emotions begin to follow a new direction. Your soul stands taller. Speaking with faith is also a form of gratitude. It is acknowledging the blessings that are coming before they arrive. It is thanking the Almighty for the unseen gifts that are already written. It is honoring His wisdom even when you do not understand the plan. Fearful praying often focuses on what is missing. Faith-filled speaking focuses on what is guaranteed. And what the Almighty has guaranteed for you is never small. It is never weak. It is never delayed without purpose. So when you speak with trust, you are honoring His timing. When you declare strength, you are honoring His promise. When you say, "I will be okay," you are honoring the one who never abandons. This shift is an act of courage. It is easy to speak fear. It is easy to repeat stress. It is easy to describe pain. But it takes courage to declare faith in the middle of the storm. It takes courage to say, "I am going to make it," even when the path is unclear. It takes courage to say, "Things are turning around," even when your situation hasn't shifted yet. It takes courage to say, "I am protected," even when you feel vulnerable. Speaking with faith is choosing courage over comfort. And every time you choose courage, the Almighty strengthens you in ways you didn't even know you needed. This transformation begins with a single decision, choosing to speak differently tonight, choosing to shift your tone, choosing to replace fear with trust, choosing to let your words carry certainty instead of doubt, choosing to believe that what you speak with sincerity, the Almighty hears with mercy, choosing to use your tongue not as an outlet for fear, but as a vehicle for faith. And once you begin this practice, your entire way of praying evolves. You rise from your prayer feeling renewed. You walk through life feeling supported. You face challenges with calmness. You speak with clarity. You live with expectation. You breathe with hope. Declaring what the Almighty has promised instead of repeating your worries is one of the most transformative shifts a believer can make. Many people spend years speaking about their problems as though their problems are more stable than the promise of their Lord. They wake up thinking about what could go wrong. They go to sleep worrying about what didn't go right. And throughout the day, they repeat the same cycle of fears without realizing they are reinforcing the very thing that is breaking them. When you repeat a worry, you give it authority. You give it space to grow. You turn it into a guest that eventually settles inside your heart. But when you declare what the Almighty has promised, you shift the power. You let His words dominate your thoughts instead of your fears. You let His guidance silence the noise inside your mind. You let His mercy drown out the anxiety. This is not just positive thinking. This is spiritual discipline. This is training your soul to align with divine truth rather than emotional turbulence. The promises of the Almighty are not fragile. They are not uncertain. They are not dependent on your circumstances. They are rooted in His infinite wisdom. So when you declare them, you stand on solid ground. You speak from a place of divine assurance. You remind yourself that His mercy precedes your mistakes. His decree precedes your worries. His knowledge precedes your confusion. His timing precedes your impatience. This is why speaking His promise is far more powerful than speaking your fear. Because your fear is temporary, limited, emotional. His promise is eternal, perfect, unchanging. When you declare a promise, you are anchoring your soul to something that cannot be shaken. Too many people allow their tongues to describe their problems instead of declaring their faith. They say things like, I don't know how I will survive this. I'm scared of what's coming. My life is stuck. Nothing is improving. I feel empty. I feel hopeless. These statements may feel honest, but they also strengthen the chains you are trying to break. However, when you begin to speak promise, you say things like, the Almighty is sufficient for me. Things will get better. Help is on the way. My path is being prepared. I will find peace again. There is goodness written for me. You are not denying your pain. You are reminding your soul of a truth stronger than pain. This shift in speech creates clarity. It creates calmness. It creates spiritual direction. When you repeat worries, your mind becomes foggy. When you declare promises, your mind becomes focused. The heart begins to breathe differently. The soul begins to move differently. Even the way you look at your situation begins to change. You stop seeing everything as a threat. You stop assuming the worst. You stop expecting disappointment. Instead, you begin to expect openings where you once expected dead ends. You begin to expect blessings where you once expected problems. You begin to expect ease where you once expected heaviness. This is not fantasy. This is faith. And faith changes the way you think, speak, walk, and respond to life. Declaring promise also protects you from emotional exhaustion. Worry drains you. It takes energy, time, and mental space. It steals sleep, peace, and stability. But when you speak divine promise, your heart begins to rest. You no longer carry everything alone. You no longer feel responsible for outcomes that are not in your control. You no longer panic about what is beyond your reach. Declaring promise teaches you how to put your burdens in the right place. It teaches you surrender. It teaches you humility. It teaches you trust. It teaches you to rely on the one who has never failed you, never abandoned you, and never forgotten you. When a believer declares promise, they start living with a sense of expectation. Not expectation from people, but expectation from their Lord. They wake up believing that something good can happen. They walk believing that opportunities exist even if they cannot see them. They handle hardship with patience because they know there is a reason behind it. They handle disappointment with resilience because they know something better is written. They approach challenges with steadiness because they know nothing happens without divine plan. This level of expectation is not naive, it is courageous. It is the courage to trust in what cannot be seen but is absolutely guaranteed. Declaring promise also strengthens the heart against negativity from the outside world. When you constantly repeat worries, you become vulnerable to every negative comment, every frightening thought, every discouraging situation. But when you declare promise, you build a shield around your soul. You stop absorbing every fear around you. You stop internalizing every doubt. You stop reacting emotionally to things that are beyond your control. You become spiritually grounded. Nothing can shake you easily. People's opinions lose their power. Circumstances lose their grip. Even sudden changes cannot throw you off because your inner world is anchored in something divine. And when you speak promise consistently, your life begins to align with what you say. Not because your words control destiny, but because your words shape your attitude, and your attitude shapes your actions, and your actions shape your outcomes. When you declare hope, you act with hope. When you declare strength, you act with strength. When you declare trust, you act with trust. These actions attract mercy, clarity, and guidance. You begin to see doors you didn't notice before. You begin to recognize blessings that were always there. You begin to discover parts of yourself you never explored. The entire trajectory of your life begins to move in the direction of your speech. The shift from worry-based speech to promise-based speech is not instantaneous. It is a practice. It requires awareness. It requires catching yourself when negative thoughts slip in. It requires choosing different words when fear tries to take over. It requires intentionally replacing old habits with new ones. At first, it feels unnatural because you are fighting years of worry-based thinking. But eventually, it becomes your new rhythm, your new pattern, your new emotional language. And once it becomes natural, your heart will never want to return to the old way of speaking. Because once you taste the peace that comes from declaring promise, the heaviness of worry becomes unbearable. Once you feel the calmness that comes from speaking trust, the chaos of fear becomes obvious. Once you experience the stability that comes from aligning your words with divine truth, the instability of negative thinking becomes clear. This shift is not just a change in vocabulary, it is a change in identity. It transforms you from someone who survives life to someone who walks through life with confidence, purpose, and spiritual assurance. And each time you declare what the Almighty has promised, your soul remembers who is in control. Your heart remembers where comfort comes from. Your mind remembers that you are protected. Your spirit remembers that you were never meant to carry everything alone. Speaking healing, peace, and provision over your life every night is a powerful spiritual practice because it transforms the final moments of your day into a conversation of hope rather than a rehearsal of fear. Many people fall asleep with their worries sitting beside them like unwanted companions. Their minds revisit every mistake, every disappointment, every uncertainty. The night becomes a place where anxieties grow, where the smallest fear becomes a giant, where the heart feels unprotected and exposed. But when you begin to intentionally speak healing, peace, and provision before you sleep, you reclaim the night. You take authority over your thoughts. You settle your spirit. You invite divine tranquility into your heart. Your words become a soft blanket around your soul, reminding you that even in stillness, you are held by the one who never sleeps. Healing begins with words, not because words magically fix everything, but because words direct the heart. When you speak healing over your body, you are teaching your mind to focus on restoration instead of pain. You are teaching your soul to trust the process instead of fearing the outcome. You are reminding yourself that every cell in your body responds to the will of the Almighty, and nothing is beyond His ability. Saying, "My body is healing, my strength is returning, my energy is being renewed," shifts your focus from limitation to possibility. It reminds you that your body has endured so much and yet is still trying to protect you, still trying to function, still trying to repair itself. This kind of speech brings comfort to the heart because healing is not just physical, it is emotional, it is spiritual, it is mental. Speaking healing every night allows you to end your day with the belief that every breath, every heartbeat, every moment of rest is part of the restoration the Almighty has written for you. Peace is another gift that grows through intentional speech. The world is loud, people are stressed, and daily life can create a mental storm that follows you everywhere. But when you speak peace into your night, you silence that storm. You create a sanctuary inside yourself. You tell your mind, you are allowed to rest now. You tell your heart, you can let go for a moment. You tell your soul, you are safe. Peace is not simply the absence of chaos, it is the presence of trust. When you whisper words of peace before you sleep, "My heart is calm, my thoughts are settling, my worries are resting in the hands of the Almighty," you are releasing the weight you carried all day. You are reminding yourself that the night is not a battlefield. It is a gift, a pause, a place where the body resets, the mind resets, and the soul reconnects with its Creator. This kind of intentional speech invites serenity to take root, making your rest deeper, your dreams lighter, and your mornings more grounded. Provision is another area where nightly speech becomes transformative. So many people fall asleep worrying about their sustenance, their income, their responsibilities, their obligations, their future. Financial stress can weigh heavier than physical pain. It lingers, it whispers, it grows. But when you speak provision over your life every night, you acknowledge that sustenance does not come from your effort alone. It comes from the one who provides without limit, saying, "What is meant for me will reach me. Opportunities are opening. Doors are being unlocked. Divine provision is flowing toward me." Creates a different kind of mindset. It shifts you from scarcity to abundance. It teaches you that your worth is not tied to your income and your future is not determined by temporary difficulty. It reminds you that the Almighty has already written your sustenance long before you worried about it. Speaking provision is an act of trust, a reminder that everything you need is already known and already planned by the one who loves you more than you love yourself. Speaking these three blessings, healing, peace, and provision every night also reshapes the way you end your day. Instead of collapsing into bed with emotional exhaustion, you enter the night with intention. Instead of carrying unresolved tension into your sleep, you let your words release it. Instead of letting fear be the last thing on your mind, you let faith become your final companion. This practice also protects you from the silent battles that people rarely talk about, the battles of overthinking, self-doubt, regret, and insecurity. When you speak nightly affirmations rooted in faith, you interrupt the cycle of negative thinking. You prevent your heart from being ambushed by midnight fears. You anchor yourself in divine reassurance. These nightly declarations also create a rhythm of consistency. When done, night after night, they become part of your emotional and spiritual routine. You begin craving the calm they bring. You begin noticing how your mood improves, how your body rests more deeply, how your mind wakes with more clarity. They become like daily nourishment for the soul. And the more consistent you become, the more your life starts to reflect the words you speak. Healing becomes not just a hope, but a process you recognize. Peace becomes not just a dream, but a lived experience. Provision becomes not just a wish, but a reality. The Almighty unfolds for you in unexpected ways. There is also something spiritually powerful about speaking these things at night specifically. The night is a time of vulnerability. The world quiets, distractions fade, and your inner thoughts become louder. It is during this silence that worries attempt to dominate your mind, but it is also during this silence that your heart is most open to truth. When you speak healing, peace, and provision at night, you are planting seeds in the most fertile part of your soul. You are imprinting messages that your subconscious will carry as you sleep. You are invoking divine presence at the moment when your heart is most receptive. Furthermore, nightly declarations reshape your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is overwhelmed and begin seeing yourself as someone who is healing. You stop viewing yourself as someone surrounded by chaos and begin seeing yourself as someone wrapped in peace. You stop defining yourself by your struggles with sustenance and begin seeing yourself as someone provided for by the Almighty's endless generosity. This identity shift is priceless. It determines how you show up in the world. It determines how you handle problems. It determines how you treat yourself. It determines how you navigate your future. Speaking these truths every night shapes who you are becoming. This practice also invites gratitude. When you speak healing, you are grateful for the body you have. When you speak peace, you are grateful for the calm that is coming. When you speak provision, you are grateful for the opportunities that have yet to reveal themselves. Gratitude elevates your heart. It sharpens your perception. It changes the emotional atmosphere of your life. Most importantly, speaking healing, peace, and provision every night teaches you to trust the one who hears you, even when your voice is soft and your heart is tired. It teaches you to lean on divine mercy even when you feel weak. It teaches you to expect goodness even when you cannot see it. It teaches you that every night spent speaking with faith becomes a morning lived with strength. Replacing doubt with words of certainty and trust in the Almighty's plan is a deep inner transformation that begins with the recognition that doubt is not just a passing thought, but a force that shapes how you see your life, your challenges, and your future. Doubt whispers quietly at first, then grows louder, convincing you that maybe things won't work out, maybe you aren't strong enough, maybe the path ahead is too difficult, maybe the prayers you made won't be answered. It feeds on fear and uncertainty until it becomes a lens through which you view everything. But when you deliberately replace that doubt with words of certainty, You break its grip on your heart. You shift the conversation happening inside you. You choose to speak from a place of trust rather than fear, from a place of faith rather than confusion. This shift is not forced positivity, it is spiritual realignment. Doubt often forms when you focus more on what you see than on what you believe. It rises when your eyes witness hardship, delay, or disappointment, and your mind interprets these moments as signs that things will not get better. But certainty comes when you remind yourself that what you see is temporary and what the Almighty has planned is beyond your vision. Certainty comes when you speak words that lift your heart instead of words that crush it. It comes when you remind your soul that the Almighty has never failed you before and will not fail you now. Every time you say, I trust the plan even if I don't understand it yet, you push back against doubt. Every time you say, something good is coming even if I cannot see it yet, you build spiritual strength. These words do not change the situation instantly, but they change how you face it. Replacing doubt with certainty is also about choosing which voice you allow to guide your heart. Doubt says, what if it goes wrong? Certainty says, what if it goes right? Doubt says, this is the end. Certainty says, this is a beginning you don't recognize yet. Doubt says, you are alone. Certainty says, you are supported in ways beyond your understanding. Doubt tries to shrink your faith. Certainty expands it. Doubt tries to make you panic. Certainty teaches you to breathe. Doubt makes you question your worth. Certainty reminds you of your place in the Almighty's care. When you replace doubt with truth-filled, faith-filled statements, you are choosing the voice of trust over the voice of fear. This practice impacts every part of your life. Your relationships become healthier because you are no longer reacting out of fear. Your decisions become clearer because you are not clouded by anxiety. Your heart becomes lighter because you no longer carry emotional weight that doesn't belong to you. You start approaching each day with expectation instead of dread. You begin to see opportunities where you once saw obstacles. You catch yourself before negative thoughts take control. This shift in internal dialogue becomes a shield that protects your mind from unnecessary stress. It also becomes a light that guides you through moments of confusion. Words of certainty also create emotional resilience. When life throws something unexpected your way, doubt pushes you into a spiral. It convinces you that the situation is bigger than you and beyond resolution. But when you speak with trust, you remind yourself that no situation comes without purpose. You say things like, there is wisdom in this. There is growth in this. There is protection in this. Even when the meaning is not immediately clear, trust does not remove difficulty. It transforms how you carry it. It gives you strength you did not know you had. It gives you patience you did not know you needed. It gives you calmness that others may not understand, but you feel deeply. Replacing doubt with certainty is also an act of self-respect. It is choosing not to let fear rule your thoughts. It is choosing to believe that your life is not random. It is choosing to trust that the Almighty is taking you somewhere, even if the path is unfamiliar. It is choosing to honor your journey instead of criticizing it. Many people weaken themselves with their own words. They rehearse fear so often that it becomes their default state. They expect disappointment before expecting blessings. They assume failure before considering success. But when you intentionally replace these thoughts with faith-driven statements, you reclaim control over your emotional world. You stop letting fear steal your peace. You stop letting doubt shape your decisions. You stop letting uncertainty dictate your happiness. This practice is especially important during delayed seasons. When something you want hasn't happened yet, Doubt can become loud. It can convince you that maybe what you want will never come. But certainty speaks differently. It says, delay is not denial. What is meant for me is moving toward me. Timing belongs to the Almighty, and His timing is perfect. These statements bring comfort because they remind you that divine timing does not operate by human expectations. What seems slow to you may be right on schedule in the greater scheme. What seems withheld may actually be being prepared. What seems out of reach may be closer than you think. Replacing doubt with trust gives you the strength to wait without breaking inside. Another benefit of replacing doubt with certainty is the emotional freedom it brings. Doubt creates tension in the body. It makes you restless. It disrupts your sleep. It makes your mind busy with unnecessary worries. But speaking trust empties that tension. It softens the heart. It helps you breathe. It settles your thoughts. It allows you to sleep with a lighter mind because you have surrendered what is not in your control. When you say, I trust what is written for me, your heart relaxes. When you say, I am being taken care of, your mind releases its grip. When you say, everything is unfolding exactly as it should, your spirit becomes grounded. This emotional freedom is priceless. Replacing doubt with certainty also deepens your connection with the Almighty. Doubt builds distance. It creates walls. It makes you feel disconnected, unsure, and emotionally far from your Creator. But trust builds closeness. It draws you near. It opens your heart. It teaches you to rely on Him, not just in words, but in actions, habits, and thoughts. Each time you replace a doubt with a trust-filled statement, you strengthen your bond. You acknowledge that He is in control, that He knows what you do not know, that He sees what you cannot see, that He is preparing something you cannot yet comprehend. This spiritual intimacy brings comfort that no human reassurance can replace. This transformation happens little by little. Doubt may still try to return, but each time you counter it with words of certainty, it loses a little more power. Each faithful statement becomes a stone in the foundation of your inner strength. Over time, these stones build a fortress inside your heart. Then you begin living differently. You no longer react to fear. You respond with calmness. You no longer collapse under worry. You stand firm with trust. You no longer lose hope easily. You remain steady because you know the one who is guiding your life never makes mistakes. When you commit to replacing doubt with certainty every day, especially every night, you reshape your future. You reshape your emotional world. You reshape your spiritual stability. You reshape how you experience life. Your words become a declaration of faith, and your faith becomes the anchor that carries you through every storm. Here is *** keynote no. 5 expanded into 1,000 words, *** with *** no headings. No ending sentences, ***, exactly as you requested. There comes a point in your journey where you realize that life does not shift simply because you cry about it, stress about it, or sit silently hoping things will fix themselves. There is a point where you rise into a deeper understanding that your tongue is not just an organ of speech, but a divine instrument placed within you to unlock what has been locked, release what has been trapped, announce what has been delayed, and bring clarity where confusion has tried to dominate. Many people pray, which is noble and essential, yet they forget that prayer is not the only instruction given to those who believe. They forget that the one who created them taught them that speaking is an extension of faith, an expression of trust, a declaration of surrender, and a powerful tool for transforming what seems immovable. Every day the world tries to shape your mind with negativity, fear, and doubt, and if you do not counter it with intentional speech, those currents carry you where you do not wish to go. You have been given the authority to speak life, guidance, purity, and protection, but if you remain silent, then the noise of the world fills the space where your declaration should have been. There are moments when you need to stand in your room, sit on your bed, walk outside, or place your hand on your chest and say, I release every burden that has weighed on my heart, and I refuse to allow darkness to take one more breath inside my soul. Not because these words magically fix everything in an instant, but because they shift your posture towards your Creator, aligning your inner world with His promises instead of your fears. When you speak, you are reinforcing the truth that you are not powerless. You are not drowning without a lifeline. You are not abandoned in your struggle. You are someone who has been taught to rise, to breathe, to straighten your back, and to say what is right, what is wise, what is hopeful, and what keeps you connected to the one who sustains you. You speak not because you are strong, but because speaking makes you strong. You speak not because you have everything figured out, but because speaking reminds your heart who is in control. You speak because silence can be misunderstood by your own soul. Silence can become a breeding ground for anxiety if it is not accompanied by remembrance and trust. Silence can trap emotions that should be released. Silence can create inner storms that words could have calmed. This is why speaking is not merely a suggestion, but a practice you must adopt nightly, especially when your heart feels heavy, your mind feels noisy, or your spirit feels unsettled tonight. You must speak with the clarity of one who knows that the night is not only for rest, but for realignment. You must speak because nighttime is when thoughts grow louder, fears exaggerate themselves, insecurities gain courage, and worries try to stretch their shadows across your peace. But the one who knows the power of remembrance does not let the night intimidate them. They stand in the quiet and speak words that cut through the darkness like light piercing a closed room. They say, my heart is protected, my mind is guided, my steps are written by the one who never leaves me, because speaking these truths strengthens the spirit in ways that silent suffering never will. Every difficulty you face has a voice of its own, and if you do not speak back, its voice becomes the only one your heart listens to. Your challenges say, you won't make it. Your doubts say, you're not enough. Your past says, you've failed too many times. Your loneliness says, no one sees you. But your voice, when aligned with truth, says, I am exactly where I need to be for my next rise. Your voice says, I am being carried by a strength greater than mine. Your voice says, I am chosen for growth, not destruction. And when you consistently speak these truths, your inner world begins to shift. Your perspective begins to heal, and your fears begin to dissolve, because fear cannot survive where truth is being spoken. Repeatedly tonight is an invitation to reclaim authority over your thoughts, to take back control over your emotions, to breathe life into areas that feel dry and weary. Tonight is the moment where you stop replaying scenes of regret and instead speak words of renewal. Tonight is where you stop questioning your worth and start declaring your purpose. Tonight is where you stop waiting for life to soften and start speaking strength over yourself. The darkness of night is not a curse but a canvas, and your words are the brush strokes that paint your spiritual state. What you speak tonight becomes the foundation upon which tomorrow builds. Sometimes you delay your own breakthrough because you refuse to open your mouth. You tell yourself you are tired. You tell yourself you don't want to talk. You tell yourself you will think it quietly in your mind. but thoughts do not carry the same power as spoken words. Thoughts remain internal, but spoken words enter the atmosphere. Thoughts can be hijacked by overthinking, but spoken words cut through mental noise. Thoughts can be vague, but spoken words are clear and intentional. When you speak, you are choosing to partner with strength, even if you feel weak. You are choosing to align with peace, even if you feel troubled. You are choosing to acknowledge that you are not alone, even if you feel isolated. Speaking becomes an act of defiance against everything, trying to silence your hope. Your words tonight should not be random sentences, but deliberate declarations. Speak healing over yourself. Speak calmness over your mind. Speak clarity over your decisions. Speak protection over your home. Speak gratitude even when you feel overwhelmed. Speak because your Creator hears you. Speak because your heart needs the reassurance. Speak because the silence you've been keeping has become too loud. Speak because what you refuse to express turns into weight you were never meant to carry. When you speak tonight, you are not pretending everything is perfect. You are not denying your struggles. You are not faking strength. You are acknowledging that even in your weakness, there is a power greater than you working on your behalf. You are reminding your soul that tonight is not the end of your story, but a moment of renewal, a moment of repositioning, a moment of returning to the truth that has always held you. Speak with intention. Speak with sincerity. Speak with trust. Because your voice, guided by your Creator's wisdom, has the power to shift your heart, elevate your mind, and illuminate the path ahead of you.